Okay, Ms. Williams.
Peaceful greetings, everyone. Welcome to part 3 of sex, the 8th area of human activity, from Neely Fuller's The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept textbook workbook and the Word Guide. Today we will attempt to answer some more questions and to give some more clarity on the type of mates that we should be looking for. So hopefully this will be constructive to help you find the most constructive mate for you. 0526.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And just the first thing I want to share is the importance of knowing, particularly knowing the person we are choosing to go to bed with. And I didn't realize how many, I think majority of the problems on planet Earth are due to the lack of knowing, the lack of understanding racism and white supremacy, what it is and how it works, the lack of knowing that we should have the will to want to produce a system of justice, the lack of knowing that the incorrect behavior patterns displayed by white people are unjust, and we should know that this planet should not function in this manner. But due to the lack of knowing, the system of white supremacy is a very, very powerful force. And I suspect that is the reason why the majority of people do not know that we should be attempting to produce justice. Getting back to the point of going to bed with a person who is not a stranger is super important. And I'm just going to read 2 sections from page 308, area 8, sex. The code says, people who engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with each other should never be strangers to one another. Each person should know as much about the other person as he or she knows about himself or herself, and maybe more. I'm going to skip to the bottom. It says, many conflicts and much confusion has proven to be the result of people not knowing enough about his or her chosen mates. Before the first act of sexual intercourse or sexual play, everything worth knowing should be known by everyone involved in advance of the first hint of sexual intercourse. So white people are definitely aware that strangers should not be having sex, which is why they have perpetuated a culture of one night stands and having flings with other people, which it results in a lot of problems, a lot of arguments that usually start with something along the lines that I didn't know, or I thought this, or I assumed this, or stuff like that. And in the system of white supremacy, non-white people should not be in conflict with each other, but especially with those who we are attempting to have sex with, or having conflict with people we have had sexual intercourse with. So the importance of knowing and asking questions about the person we are trying to have a sexual intercourse with, supremely important. You know, we could avoid a lot of stress, a lot of trauma if we took more time in getting to know the people we were taking to the bedroom. But this powerful force of white supremacy has created a culture of, as I said, one night stands and flings, and just not really placing a lot of value and having some sort of connection with the people we're taking to the bedroom. Thus, we have a lot of conflict, a lot of people being killed, a lot of so-called crimes of passion. So I think this section is so freaking important, just like the majority of just like all sections of this book. Anyone like to share?
I think that will be kind of impossible to happen because a lot of non-white people lie to themselves and lie to their mates. So if they're not only lying to themselves, of course they're gonna lie to the people that they wanna sexually be active with as far as that goes. So it's always gonna be a conflict of interest and like just more issues in the situation because they I think it's just a feeling of just the flesh, a set of looking things as what they are. So they're not concerned of the respect for themselves, let alone for other people to actually tell the truth when it comes to trying to be sexual with another person.
Can I be heard? Uh, I wanted to comment on kind of people engaging in sexual activity without knowing each other. Uh, the racist white supremacist society, a lot of value has been placed on these quick one night stand, the speed dating type thing, Tinder type of interactions, where it's very easy to meet somebody and just have sex with them without even really knowing, getting to know the person, or even asking enough questions. Uh, evidence shows, as evidence shows, uh, there's no value in knowing somebody before having sexual intercourse with them. I think that the so-called friend zone is something that is a product of that. You know, uh, now it's having sex with somebody who you would call a friend or an associate, which is somebody you generally just know, doesn't hold as much value as meeting somebody in a bar one night and taking them home and going off to brag about it. So that was just an observation, something I wanted to comment.
Yeah, and going back to what Curry said, that perhaps maybe one of the first a new question we could add to the list of questions to ask potential mates is that, do you have self-respect, which is refusing to lie to yourself, or just simply asking will you can you promise me that you won't lie to me or yourself? And like we discussed last meeting or the meeting before that, we should be able to have some idea if the person is being is not telling the truth. We should be able to pick up on that, hopefully. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. I would say nothing. I would say very, very few things are so-called impossible. Extremely difficult, yes. Extremely unlikely, yes, but impossible. Don't. I think is really important. This piece of the code, the first time, last time code. This piece of code would even help white people if they were to practice it, because I'm aware of the huge amount of domestic violence that occurs amongst race soldiers, and how they tend to abuse their partners quite often. So this first time, last time code, very important. It would save a lot of black males and black females from abuse and mistreatment. I remember growing up, And it's just like hearing stories about Black females throwing boiling water on their Black mates, and Black mates kicking and beating up on Black females. And I didn't think much about it, but I just thought, dang, I would hate to have someone throw boiling water at me or hot grease at me, which is what was actually what was said. Black female threw hot grease on their Black mate. And if we were to practice this part of the code, which states, a very important part of your code should and must be that the very first time that your chosen mate inflicts bodily harm upon you must be the very last time that you allow yourself to be in contact with him or her. First time, last time, no contact after the first time, either directly or indirectly. No talking, no message sending, ever, ever. And never make this, well, my bad. No message sending, ever, ever, and never. Make this known to your chosen mate long before there is any sign of the very first argument, disagreement, dissatisfaction, disappointment, or the slightest discontent. Make it known that there will be no second guessing and no second chances. First time, last time. Absolutely, it is over, finished, complete, fixed. No contact, no conflict. This part of the compensatory counter-versus code should apply everywhere at all times and forever. I think if I had known this piece of the code earlier in my life, I would have loved to practice it, because I have tolerated a lot of nonsense and these so-called arrangements, so-called relationships. So really, really important. It will allow a lot of Black people to avoid a lot of trauma, a lot of brutality that could occur amongst these arrangements that white people allow us to have with each other, whom they know will be at best tacky and at worst terroristic and tragic. If there is a loss of life or a person is maimed, disfigured, I'm sure if someone throws hot grease on you, you will surely be disfigured. So we should want to avoid this, which is why practicing first time, last time, highly important. Any thoughts, comments on that? If not, feel free to share your own notes.
Yeah, I guess I just have a question. I would like to know why it's so hard for Black people, non-white people to understand the concept of first time, last time. Because, we talk about domestic violence, domestic abuse is something that is talked about frequently. And many, 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 many non-white people have experienced it, yet it's hard for them to implement this first time, last time. For whatever reason, they keep in contact with each other with, false hopes that this person will change, and they don't, but it doesn't stop them from kind of repeating the cycle again. So yeah, why do you think it's so hard for non-white people, Black people, non-white people to implement first time, last time?
Hi, this is Ash. I think you have to look at the conditions that the people exist in, because it's easy to say like, oh, you can no longer have contact with this person, but if you share a lease with this person, if you're dependent on them for income, if you're dependent on them for anything, it makes it a lot harder to leave that situation. And so I think it's easier said than done. You may have to leave your housing situation. You may have to not have your children have access to this person anymore, et cetera, which is a lot more complicated than saying, I'm just not going to talk to this person. I think you have to think about it in the lens of like adult people who are potentially married or share wealth, not just like, 20-something-year-olds who are just dating. Yeah, like what Ash said, like an example, women back in the days, like in the 1950s and 40s, when they were married to men, they really couldn't do things without them. Couldn't buy a house, you couldn't, spend your savings or take out your money out the bank account. You kind of have to do everything that your husband agreed on at that time. So for those women, just imagine the terror they were going through, that they are married to this person, but they're being abused. But the abuse that they're dealing with, they don't have a choice but to escape because that's who they depend on. Um, a lot of women depend on men to, you know, as far as children or provide or et cetera, or they don't have anybody, or sometimes they move far away from their family. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So, I mean, I know a lot of women in situations where they take the abuse because their child has somewhere to go or to where they can lay their head down. And they might do it in the stance of like, okay, I'm going to try to move, but I'm going to do it quietly so he won't know. But it's not a easy situation to just pick yourself up and just leave automatically. As far as for a woman that could probably be more independent and do things on her own and don't have no ties to him as far as like children.
Oh, I was gonna say, in response to that question, victims, they learn from the usual suspects, and a reason a non-white female may not be able to leave an arrangement because of first time, last time might be because of the victim partner using deceit, violence, and the threat of violence to keep them in that position or in that arrangement. So the the victim can terrorize their partner, if I'm making sense.
Like playing with their emotions as far as how they feeling.
They could do that. That would be deceit, and then the threat of violence, like like the usual suspects do to us. Like, hey, if you don't do this, I'm gonna punch you in the face or something. I don't know. That's an example, but like domestic violence. That's what I mean. Kind of like when I say direct violence.
And to add to my attempt to answer that question, I would just say that it's hard for non-white people, especially Black people, to just understand most things that could help them. It's hard for Black people to understand things that can make their lives more constructive, that can help them to avoid small problems becoming big problems, because that's how we've been trained. We've been trained and reduced to such a retarded state that even if we have constructive information introduced to us, we have a very, very hard time of applying it, even if we even believe it and think it's something to be taken serious. But even saying that is kind of contradictory, because we have been trained to be serious about nonsense and very silly about serious things like the system of racism and white supremacy. So like many things in this book, it will be hard to understand for confused victims of racism, because that is the programming / training / conditioning we have been given by racist men and racist women. So it's not just this piece of the code. I would say it's a large majority of the code that non-white people will have a hard time adapting to. Thank you for the question, Q, and the answers, everyone. So I only have, go ahead.
I was just thanking everybody for the answers. Very thoughtful and very well said.
Yeah. So I only have. I think this passage is really important, but my only comment is hard pill to swallow. And this is on page 310. The code says, do not produce offspring until you can adequately feed, clothe, and shelter them with very little help from others, and until you are ready, willing, and able to teach them in great detail about racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works in all areas of activities. Females, do not, as long as white supremacy exists, expect any non-white male to be much of help to you in solving any problems that you may have, particularly to provide you with adequate food, clothing, shelter, etc., or provide you and your offspring with protection from harm. Explanation: as long as white supremacy, racism exists, non-white males are allowed to do with or for non-white females only what the white supremacist, racist men, and racist women permit them to do. When choose, okay, so yeah, it's just really incorrect position that white people who practice racism have put us in, but unfortunately, I think this advice checks out. You know, I don't know how many others here were born, were raised, were like sheltered. I don't know what to call it. Attempted was what I'm just gonna say raised by a single parent, but I most certainly was raised by a victim single mother parent, and she did a grand job, I think. But that was the case for most people on my block who were black did not have black males in the home, and so racist men and racist women have done an excellent job of creating situations where the black male will either leave because of the conflict involving the female, or will leave due to the millions and millions of other reasons that white supremacy has created, whether it's prison or whatever it may be. I think this is very sound advice. You know, I attempt to help in this arrangement, but that's only because the money I have has been given to me by white people, and I'm able to use that money to help my non-white chosen mate. So hard pill to swallow, but it is what it is. This is why we must produce justice immediately, so we won't be in this pitiful position.
Yeah, I have something I'd like to add in regards to non-white females with children, offspring. I think Mr. Fuller says something about for females, if they have offspring, expect to take care of it alone. I think with that piece right there, that may be a reason there may not be much female participation in regards to like certain studies, because they might be maintaining their children or offspring, so they can't participate the way they would like. If I'm making sense.
Very well said, Dan. I would add that sorry, just left my mind. I would like to add that with this part in particular, I think it eliminates a lot of doubt in the non-white female's mind. It unfortunately greatly lowers her expectations, but I think that just is the reality of the situation, that the non-white female should not expect the non-white male to be of any help. And I think this is just based off of evidence. And like you said, it is a hard pill to swallow, especially as a non-white male, hearing that non-white females shouldn't expect anything from us as far as that. But I think that's just the reality of it. Too many non-white males are not able to provide the constructive help that a non-white female needs.
That could also explain a common theme I've been seeing on social media. On Twitter, I see a lot of Black females, non-white females, like literally saying that they want to be a white man's whore, or they're gonna go find a white man, because I believe their brain computer has picked up on the current situation on planet Earth, but instead of working to produce justice, they are running to the prison masters, the race soldiers of the world. But that should be expected in a system of white supremacy, and very, very tragic and pitiful, just to say the least. Miss Williams?
Yes, in some ways that's a difficult pill for non-white females to have to endure. But we have to realize we are at war, and at war, you got to do what you got to do. If our mindset is only the way the racist white supremacist has trained us to always look to the male to be our support, then we'll stay stuck there. But when we realize we are in a system of racism, white supremacy, and the racist man and the racist woman controls everything, then we have to realize, in order to replace racism, white supremacy with a system of justice, there are just certain things we're just going to have to do. Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to do it. But I wanted to jump ahead with a comment, reading rather, from page 317. And it says, do not go looking for a mate. Instead, discover a mate while doing something of constructive value that also involves people of the opposite complementary sex who are also doing something of constructive value. Know for sure that the choice of a sexual mate for yourself is a supreme choice. And know for sure that if you make another choice in the future, that your other choice may be equal value to the supreme choice, but not a better one. I like that, because so many times it's like women in the system of racism and white supremacy, women have been taught to compete against other women. And we really should not be competing. We're at war. There should not be a competition at all. You know what I'm saying? The only thing our focus should be is, how are we gonna produce justice? And in order to produce justice, we just have to make sure we are lining ourselves with the right person who can adequately help us, and we can adequately help them to help produce justice in our activities that we do, the places we go, and the things like that. But it's gonna be a difficult task. That's why it's so important that we take our time to find the right person. And it's not like as before, being in the system of racism, white supremacy, a lot of time we picking and choosing, but we're not using a code system of questions to define, what am I really looking for in a person, right? And is this person going to be constructive enough to help me to do what we need to do in producing justice? So that is going to be a little difficult task. It's kind of like what they say, finding a needle in a haystack, but I believe it can be done. And I do want to make a correction on last broadcast. I made a statement and I found out it's very incorrect. So I do want to clarify that, is that I think Helen B, she made a statement about her speaking with a guy and talking about some of the questions. And he said that the person could lie. Based on the questions, I was thinking that it was no way possible they could lie through that and you wouldn't detect it. But then I realized in the system of racism, white supremacy, anything is possible. Anything. So I had to rethink that, because if the system of racism, white supremacy is built on two main factors, deception and violence, we can expect even non-white people to be deceptive. So we can't always assume that they're going to be 100% honest. But I think if we ask enough questions And then I was looking at a part in the code where it was talking about the flaws of a person, right? And we definitely know, we don't want to lie to ourselves now, right? We definitely know we all have flaws. We do, you know? Sometimes we don't want to admit it, but we have to try to see if we can find a mate whose flaws are not too difficult for you to deal with. And then hopefully their flaws can be something that you can deal with and still be able to work to produce justice. Because, you know, we all got, we in the system of racism and white supremacy. So we are all insane, whether we want to be or not, we are. So those flaws come out of our insanity. So we just have to be careful in looking for the particular mate that we're looking for and realizing they are gonna have flaws because you have flaws. And then see how well you're able to work through the flaws and producing justice. I mean,
Really well said, Ms. Williams. I also appreciate that piece of the code. Finding a person while doing something constructive is a very, very solid idea. And also being really, really serious about making that supreme choice of who's going to be your chosen mate, because these arrangements between amongst non-white people, sometimes they could just be a disaster waiting to happen, whether the disaster ends in someone going to prison or someone going to the grave. It's really, really incorrect. And I think we should be very serious about our chosen mates. And if we are looking for a mate, a person to share the bed with, the best approach probably would be to attempt to find that mate when you're doing something constructive. But you could run into the issue where the female is not interested in going that route because she's there to do the constructive task and then go about her way. But it still is very possible to do what the code suggests. Ms. B?
Hello, everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everybody. I remember when I was growing up. Yeah, we had clubs. We had a teen club by the name of the Tunnel. We had, block parties and stuff like that, non-constructive activities where people will hook up and meet. But I remember also being told that, you could meet someone at your job or meet someone at the library and like always like they said it, to find someone in a constructive place, but they didn't use the term constructive, obviously. They just said like, try to find someone at the library or at your job or let me see what else. Where else? Um, like let's say they're doing something at a community center to meet someone there. So, and I really miss that. I miss that, that was one of the things that was stowed upon me when I was growing up. Even though, there were other places to meet people as well that was not constructive. I was kind of encouraged to find someone, that was doing something constructive, that we're both doing something constructive at the same time. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, really constructive advice. Finding someone at the library. Black people who read are very, very important, especially if they're reading counter-racist material. This piece of the code reminds me of what I heard yesterday. I heard a Black male bragging about having sex with a white woman, and I told him, be careful around white women. They will send you to the psych ward, grave, or prison faster than a lot of other things can. And he said he knows, but I don't think he has a clue. But and that just goes with the conditioning, the training we've been given to want to brag about our sexual conquest. But I really like that the code gives us things to say if we happen to be asked about area 8. I don't know how many, I don't know where and how often people are asked about area 8 in regards to who they've been intimate with. But I really like this piece of the code from 311, which says, when choosing to respond to general questions about your sexual activities, say, while existing within the system of white supremacy, my sexual activities have always been pitiful, primitive, stupid, silly, tacky, and or trashy. Explanation. Within the system of white supremacy racism, and because of the conflict and confusion that racist men and racist women produce among non-white people, all of the sexual activities that involve non-white people can collectively be described as pitiful, primitive, silly, stupid, tacky, and or trashy. If any of your sexual activities have included making people extremely fearful of you, or you extremely fearful of them, be willing to say that your sexual activities included behavior that was terroristic. Really, really interesting piece of code right there. And another thing I want to read from this page is also 311. Question: does every person in the known universe have a so-called serious sex problem? Answer: yes. During the existence of the system of white supremacy, all sexual activity between people produce problems. Explanation: every person in a known universe is at all times either engaging in sexual intercourse and or sexual play, or he or she is directly or indirectly reacting to those who are so engaged. Either way, all such actions and reactions produce serious problems in one form or another. In addition, all of these problems collectively help to make the problem of replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice extremely difficult. Area 8, most powerful, if not the most powerful motivating forces is sex. So some counter racists have said. So it makes sense, and I agree. A huge problem is white people capturing victims to have sex with, and then producing offspring who just grow up totally confused, totally victimized, and or not even producing offspring, just a white person capturing a non-white person, taking them to the bedroom, raping them over and over, to the point where their mind is totally like fried, where they can't even comprehend that white supremacy is a dominating force, and that they should not be okay with it being on planet Earth, let alone be in bed with a person who has failed, a white person who has failed to produce justice, and who has not done everything that they can do to produce justice. So I really understand this part about how the serious sex problem is yeah, it really is one of the few things that I can think about and just get a little bit angry / annoyed, because you can see it taking place 2021. And this has been going on since the ancient days of white supremacy. That was discussed in Destruction of the Black Civilization, where we learn about the so-called mulattoes and how they were used to produce confusion and dominate other victims of racism. So this tactic of using sex to refine and maintain white supremacy goes back a very long time. And it's about time that non-white people start to get it. Barbara Sizemore finally get it, but we will see. Ms. Helen?
Hello, me again. Yeah, I wanted to know if anybody ever noticed, like, when white people get with non-white people, their get-together story, how the white person pursues the non-white person. I found it quite common. If you ever paid attention to Serena Williams and her husband meeting story, how they got together, and there's a couple on YouTube by the name of Gabe and Bay and Gabe. They have a how he pursued her. He found her. Who else? It's somebody else too. It's quite a few. Oh, it's another couple. They have a set of beautiful twin girls, but no,
The
she has.
McClures.
Uh oh. Hello.
Yeah, I'm saying the McClures. You was talking about the
Yes,
McClures.
yes, the McClures. Yes, you knew exactly what I was talking about. Their story. They don't have. She's married to the guy, to the white guy, but the twins are not his. She did have a baby by him. She has a son by him, but their how did they meet story, same thing, and it's a reoccurring story with them, like how they prowl and they they go after us, and I just want to know if anybody noticed that in that scenario. I mute my line.
That's funny you mention it, because somebody that I know recently entered into a tragic arrangement, and it was similar to that. The non-white male was being pursued by the white female, and now they are in a tragic arrangement. Um, so I definitely have noticed that. I think it's funny you bring that up.
Really interesting. I can say I observed that behavior, but it would make sense. White people love hunting, so I could definitely imagine them being on a prowl. The majority of my interactions, the rapes I've been involved in with white people. Well, I should word that better. The times I've been raped by white women, I usually have met them on Twitter and whatnot. And when I was in the area of the world known as Hong Kong, the same thing. I met those rapist white women on Tinder as well, and so for that app it takes 2 swipes to get the little communication started. But I do recall the white women being much eager to hang out and share space than I've ever been. So definitely makes sense what you mentioned, Helen. I think on page 314 there are many important points that non-white males, especially Black males, should get in their brain computers immediately. This is why every non-white person should buy this book, because I'm not going to read all of them. I'm only going to read number 14. So buy the book, producejustice.com. Please buy the book. Please help to produce justice. But point number 14, and this is in regards to when interacting with non-white females who are our mates. Number 14, 314 says, to not blame each other, but to blame yourself as individuals for any part of the aforementioned agreement not used that resulted in something happening that was not constructive. Also blame the white supremacist races. So this can also save a lot of headaches, a lot of stress and trauma if we understand that when fights do occur, that it's not that constructive to attempt to blame the non-white female, because 10 times out of 10, it's the white people who have created the situation to occur. And 9 times out of 10, the non-white male has done something as well to trigger the non-constructive interaction or conflict. So this piece of the code, I think is really important. I think I could use this to greatly improve my arrangement and or future arrangements. So yeah, any thoughts, comments, any others have notes to share? Go ahead, Miss B.
No, I'll let somebody else go. I just want to put my hand up to read number 10 if it hasn't been read already.
All right, it hasn't. We'll have Kwaku go, and then you could go if no one else has comments in between.
I was gonna read something else, so you can go ahead, Miss Helen.
Okay, so we all want to read. You sure nobody has any comments about what you just said? Zero? Anybody?
I'd add something to everything that's been said. One thing I want to say in regards to just like finding a mate. Not only finding a mate is like something maybe some people are interested in, just finding associates, because there are not many people that want to speak about this. I would say, because there can be a lot of spectating. So it's interesting that we have everyone here, and then with the also, besides finding a mate, finding someone for the bedroom is pretty easy. I'm reminded of a story that Mr. Fuller was telling Gus about when Mr. Fuller was going to black meetings or whatnot, and Mr. Fuller was saying how he and like two other guys were standing around talking and stuff, and then one of the guys was like, "Man, there's some fine broads around here. I'm gonna get me one of these women and get them up to my room." And then the guy, he went around and he found him a non-white female, and then Mr. Fuller and the other guy were just sitting there still talking, and then the guy told Mr. Fuller, "That's the only MFer that nobody's here for." And that was an interview with Mr. Fuller and Gus.
If you can find that, can you please send it to the Discord and or WhatsApp? Thank you for that, for sharing that. Mr. Carter.
Yes, thank you.
I remember that interview was really funny. Said that. One of the things I wanted to mention was good evening, everyone, by the way. Was about the I think it was a question about non-white males and females fighting or hitting one another or something like that, violence. One of the things, if you could look at non-white people in general, like violence is like a everyday thing. We've been trained to think hitting each other, our offspring, whoever is, that's the correct thing to do. And it's like, it's just, we take it like nonchalantly, excuse my English. So yeah, I see that every day where, when we talk, just talking, like even in a joke, like, hey, I was gonna knock that MF out yesterday. Oh, I was gonna hit you upside your head. We just play with it. Like, it's really us hitting each other. And first thing is balance all the time. That's the way we've been conditioned. So that is to be expected when you're dealing with non-white people. So that's really all I had to say.
Really unfortunate, but I mean, it's the case. Kwaku.
Commenting on what Mr. Carter said, I have younger siblings, and a lot of the conditioning and training definitely starts at a very early age. I mean, the way that they interact with each other, or so-called play with each other, involves a lot of hitting and, being excited or laughing at other people's pain. So I think that it's very evident that children are taught very early to hit each other and to value hitting each other. And I don't know if that is somehow their way of expressing so-called love to each other. I think it's very toxic. And then commenting on what 05 read in regards to number 14, I see a very large movement of people on social media platforms of blaming each other, especially non-white males blaming non-white females a lot for the state of Black non-white male-female relationships. And even though they tend to talk so much about what the non-white female is doing wrong, they never really talk about what non-white males haven't done or failed to do, which is produce justice. So that was something that came to mind in regards to number 14.
You go ahead, Miss Helen. Thank you, Kwaku.
To go on what Kwaku just said, I see that movement as well. I'm not gonna give their name out, but yeah, it's a very big platform on YouTube, and that's all they do, bash non-white females, and it's all our fault. And it's just really sad, and I believe it's out of fear. It's fear. They don't want to shine a light. I don't even want to say that. They don't want to draw attention or really put blame where it belongs. And that's on white people. I want to read 10. 10 is to not engage in gossip or contribute to gossip in regards to what is said about any act of sexual intercourse and or sexual play that involves any non-white person with another non-white person. And yeah, I this really resonate with me because that's another thing that's huge on Twitter and on YouTube. They have whole channels about this, about gossiping, and people love watching us bicker and gossip one another. And I mute my line.
Yeah, it has become an industry of its own to have non-white people, especially Black people, in conflict with one another. Just totally being foolish in our interactions with each other. But I believe there's many. I don't know how many new ones there are, but I'm sure there's many reality TV shows. The one I'm talking about in particular is Love, like basketball wise, something like that. And I'm certain that show is like a prime example of Black people, Black arrangements, conflict within those arrangements being made fun and entertaining for people to consume. So we have been trained to mistreat one another, and there's a whole industry now behind that. Probably has always been there, but it's probably more in our faces. So yeah, this hostility that we have for each other will consist until there's a system of justice, and really tragic. Yes, Kwaku?
I wanted to comment on that as well, but I wanted to read this first on page 316, where he says, "Do not demand, expect, and or attempt to force your chosen mutual partner in sexual intercourse to not engage in mutual sexual intercourse and or sexual play with others." Explanation: during the existence of racism and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, no person in the known universe is correctly qualified to demand, expect, and or force his or her chosen partner in sexual intercourse and or sexual play, not to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with any other person. The white supremacist racists are not correctly qualified because they are white supremacist racists. The white people who are not white supremacists are not correctly qualified because they have not forced or persuaded the white people who practice racism to stop practicing racism. The non-white people are not correctly qualified because as victims of racism, they are forced to tolerate, submit to, and cooperate with the white supremacists at all times and in all areas of activity. Notes: victims of racism/white supremacy do not own each other and should not attempt to do so. Non-white people who engage in mutual sexual intercourse and or sexual play with each other are not correctly qualified to disapprove of or prevent each other from choosing to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play with other non-white people. Victims of racism / white supremacy are equal to each other in their choices of what to do or not do with other victims of white supremacy in matters of mutual sexual intercourse and or sexual play. Non-white people should be absolutely sure that by choosing to be with each other in that manner, they will never deprive, reject, or seek to do harm to each other because of acts of sexual intercourse and or sexual play with other non-white people. Conflict about such matters should and must be non-existent. Honesty and clarity are better than hypocrisy, hostility, and confusion. During the existence of racism, white supremacy, and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, it is correct to minimize and or end all conflict between non-white males and females, and also to promote the end of all sexual intercourse and sexual play between white people and non-white people until after racism, white supremacy has ended. This is the basic correct process for helping all to produce justice, balance between people. So I felt like this kind of went in with the platforms being created on white people, black people just bickering with one another. So mentioning that sex is one of the biggest motivating forces in the universe, I find that what Neely Fuller is saying here is kind of to prevent people from thinking about sex so much, these to get people to stop thinking about sex so much, which when people are thinking about sex so much, they aren't able to think constructively to produce justice. And a lot of reason why people are thinking about sex so much is because they want their sexual partners or these other people, or their sexual partners to only have sex with them. And so they tend to focus on that aspect of it. So when their partners don't want to have sex with them, they devote all their time and energy to making making that other non-white person's life miserable, which greatly takes away from thinking constructively to produce justice. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of something I was trying to get at with that. That's what I was thinking of, especially in the notes part. At first, when I read this, I was kind of thinking, like, is he necessarily saying that it's okay for another non-white person to cheat on another non-white person? But I don't think that's what he's saying, right? Because he said conflict about such matters should and must be non-existent. Honesty and clarity are better than hypocrisy, hostility, and confusion. So if you're clear from the beginning that you plan on having sex with other non-white people, and you're honest about that, then the other individual involved can assess that flaw, I guess you could say, and decide whether or not they want to stay with it, whether they want you to be their chosen mate, which would go a long way in preventing the kind of confusion. Like you were saying, that there's all these platforms of people just gossiping and bickering about non-white people having sex, and it's a big thing when a non-white person is found cheating, or a non-white person is found in a different relationship. So I think that this in a sense is trying to get people to not focus so much on that aspect of sex. Hope that made sense. Meet my line.
Yeah, I think that's a really important aspect. The whole I've definitely been in arrangements where that was the whole mindset that me and my victim mate had, that we like sort of owned each other, and it just really escalated to me being controlled to a degree that I was just not comfortable with. But that's an example of a small problem becoming a huge problem, because that's not a mindset I should have entertained, that I own this non-white female, or that she owns me. But that is the training we have received, and that hyper loyalty. Miss Williams, I'll let you go, and then I'll finish my thought.
You can finish if you want. I can hold.
All right. I want to read this portion on 315 because we make a non-white people, non-white Black males I've seen just really lose their heads over this loyalty aspect of arrangements. On 315 it states, under these conditions, maybe I should read the first three. I'm gonna read the first three paragraphs so everyone can be totally clear on what this is referencing. So the code says, all non-white males and non-white females should minimize conflict by avoiding being in each other's presence, except for acts of sexual intercourse. And when not in each other's presence, seek to help each other by doing different forms of constructive work in support of each other. Explanation: during the existence of racism and white supremacy, the non-white males and non-white females of the known universe are forced to interact with each other in a manner that is tacky, trashy, and or terroristic. The white supremacists do not allow non-white males and females to interact with another in any manner that is better than tacky. Therefore, the very best that non-white males and females can do to minimize the discomfort that is associated with this tackiness is to not be in each other's immediate presence except for sexual intercourse and engaging in constructive work that obviously requires you to be in each other's immediate presence. Under these conditions, white supremacy minimize conflict by making your entire male-female interactions associated only with planned counter-racist activities. Avoid idle talk and so-called aimless togetherness. As a non-white male, do not demand or expect loyalty or devotion from a non-white female, and do not ridicule her because of her lack of so-called loyalty or devotion to you or to non-white people in general. So I have this this phrase just repeating in my head as we discuss this part, and I quote, well, fuck you then, bitch. It's something I've heard a lot, like too many times in my lifetime. And this is because the Black male is some way, shape, or form disappointed with what the non-white female has done. And if we didn't have such expectations, we could avoid a lot of disappointment. And I really appreciate what Kwaku mentioned about how when in certain arrangements, when a non-white male or non-white female doesn't get what they want, they will terrorize their partner, try to make their life miserable, and that's also very common. We see non-white females slashing tires, and we see non-white males doing the same thing. They will find many ways to terrorize the person instead of erasing all contact with that person. But this is the training we have. We have been just trained to operate on emotions, and if our thinking is totally incorrect, then our emotions are just going to be out of whack, to say the least. So I think and I just heard this really confused victim by the name of 21 Savage talking about he'd rather have loyalty than love, and I'm like, just listening to it just made my made me really annoyed, because we have this really confused victim who produces noise that perpetuates Black death, but he's not using definitions. Like, he doesn't have a definition of love or loyalty. He just thinks loyalty is people listening to him or something like that. So we need to just get out of this mindset of thinking non-white females or non-white males owe us anything. The people who owe us are white people who have failed to produce justice, and every other non-white person is just a victim, and more times than not, a confused victim, which is a really, really tragic case. go ahead, Ms. Williams, and whoever else after her has something to share.
I agree with you 100%, 0526. Great point. I want to share something on page 318 underneath the note, and it says, question, when choosing a sexual mate, what are some of the most important things to remember to do or not to do, or not do rather? Answer, number one, do keep in mind that your chosen mate, like everyone else, is at all times in some way, great or small, in the process of becoming someone else, hopefully the universal woman. There is reason, I'll put the universal woman in there, okay? There is reason to believe that between birth and death, people change. There is reason to believe that before birth and after death, people change. Number two, do not choose a mate, choose to mate, choose as a mate any person that you believe that you cannot talk to about anything, and that and tell the person the truth about everything that you think, say, or do, or have done, or at any time in any area of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, and counter war. Number three, do not choose a mate or any person whom you would not longer want to mate if that person, while being your mate, chooses also to have sexual intercourses with another non-white person. Number four, do not choose a mate, any person whom you believe would provoke you into committing violence because that chosen mate chose to engage in sexual intercourses with another after having promised to only have sexual intercourse with you, and or any reason other than direct defense against serious bodily harm that is non-just or non-correct. Explanation, according to the compensatory counter-racic logic, and during the existence of racism and white supremacy, any mutual sexual intercourse or sexual play that is for the purpose of helping to produce thought, speech, and action to end racism is A, correct, B, should not be disapproved of, and C, must result in any conflict between non-white people, because our whole goal is to solve problems without making any. And I'll close with this last point. Therefore, if your chosen mate has one serious flaw or many, it is best or correct and always choose a mate whose most serious flaws, while greatly hurtful, are also not disastrous. You should know for sure that your chosen mate has other qualities that you have found so desirable that you would not and could not distance yourself from him or her without experiencing irreplaceable loss. I'm mute.
Yeah, I really like that piece of the code. I really like that the code calls that the supreme choice. It shows the importance of choosing people to go to bed with, choosing people to call our mates. It is a supreme choice that we need to attempt to be more serious about. For sure, it will in the long run save us a lot of headache and perhaps so-called heartache. Yeah, really, really good piece of the code. I hope we all can find or maintain our arrangements with a chosen mate who will allow us to be more constructive and help us to produce a system of justice guaranteeing no one is allowed to be mistreated and those who need help receive constructive help.
Yeah, number 3 on that list was one of those things like that I couldn't agree with or do personally. I felt like I could do 1, 2, and 4, but number 3 was something, that I don't know if I could do that. I know I wouldn't be violent towards anyone like that, but number 3, that was a tough one. I don't know if I could necessarily still be with my chosen mate if that happened. A lot of things I have agreed with in the code, but this was one of the things I have struggled to. Personal codes, I guess.
Yeah. Totally understandable. Number 3 is just to remind one what number 3 is. Do not choose as a mate any person whom you would not longer want as a mate if that person, while being your mate, chooses to also have sexual intercourse with another non-white person. So this is where your own personal code comes in handy, which is leaving your chosen mate if they have sexual intercourse with another non-white person without expressing that intent to you first. So yeah, I also agree with the majority of the code, but this is something that would have to be refined if I'm adding it to my code for sure. I'm certain a lot of non-white people would not appreciate this piece of the code as well. Anyone would like to share? Anyone would like to share comments, questions?
I had another section if nobody had anything on kind of following on 319. I liked this part as well, where it says, as a non-white male, whatever you choose to say is a fault of any non-white female. Also be willing to say that her fault is your failure. Your failure to do what needs to be done to replace the system of racism, white supremacy with the system of justice, balance between people. Explanation. During the existence of racism and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, it is correct to say that the faults and the failures of non-white people, particularly non-white males, are the direct or indirect result of their not thinking, speaking, and acting effectively to replace the system of racism with the system of justice. So I think this just kind of goes back to, the emerging trend of blaming, non-white females for their lack of whatever loyalty, dynamic, the pointing the finger that's going on a lot. I think people forget that, that a lot of the things that the non-white female experiences is due to the non-white male being unable to protect her from racism, white supremacy, and the non-white male's inability to end racism, white supremacy. So I thought that was very well said, that especially also be willing to say that her fault is your failure. So yeah.
Yeah, I also appreciate that part of the code. I have no problem admitting my pitiful position and that I have completely failed to protect my sister, my victim mother, and every single non-white female I've ever encountered. Because one black male could do so little against the war being waged against us, but doesn't mean that we still have not failed to produce justice. Perhaps if a lot of non-white males who who pretend to be men, who have a lot of pride in being who have a lot of pride and pretending to be men, perhaps if they were to realize that they have failed to be men because they have not produced justice, perhaps that they will be able to use some of that man ego to get serious about the race problem, because there's a lot of communities of proud Black men, they like to call themselves, who just don't seem that to have an understanding of racism and white supremacy. And I'll end it there. Ms. B.
Hello. I going back to number 3. Do not choose a mate. Do not choose as a mate. That one. There are a lot of people. They say that that's one that they're like or whatever. But it's really interesting how many people are in that situation right now as we speak. There are a lot of people because of financial reasons that they're still with their mate. They're so-called broken up and they've moved on and they're dating other people or have another girlfriend, but yet they still live with their ex-girlfriend or boyfriend. And yeah, so it's amazing that a lot of people don't want this number 3, but a lot of people are in that situation. I meet my line.
Ouch. Correct, I believe. Mr. Kwaku?
Yes, thank you, Ms. B. Going back to the failures, I wanted to kind of bring an example for like clarification. One thing I thought of is kind of like when the Black women try to, or when the non-white female tries to kind of act and change her appearance to appear like white women. I feel that comes from, and a lot of non-white males may point to that, saying that these non-white females want to look like white women and etc. But that comes from the value being placed on the white female. You see a lot of non-white males valuing the white female, going and seeking her, and really I believe it to be a reaction from the non-white females to kind of seek that kind of to change their appearances, just to get the attention back, just to get the attention of the non-white males back. That was something that came to mind. So yeah.
Yeah, I've talked about that unfortunate reality of the weaves and the blonde hair and the overdoing of cosmetics that non-white females and sometimes even males engage in. And yeah, I don't think I have to say anymore. It's just something that will continue until white supremacy has been replaced with justice, and all this self-hate that produces those behaviors can be rid of, hopefully. So,
I had a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so do you think that there's anything that the non-white female does that the non-white male isn't at fault for?
Well, I have it in my code that it's all people, white people are to blame the most, but non-white females and non-white males also share the blame, because I suspect even if every single non-white male on the planet was serious about producing justice, if the non-white females aren't on the same mind wave or same frequency, then I don't think we will be able to produce justice. So we need both the non-white males and the non-white females to attempt to produce justice, not just the Black males or non-white males. So I think it's a shared blame, but the people who are to blame the most are white people who have failed to produce justice and who practice white supremacy. Miss
Yeah,
Williams?
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Ellis. We haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I don't like to talk a lot. Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing that you just said. I mean, I can kind of see where Fuller was going with that logic, to try to prevent non-white males and non-white females from blaming each other. But really, it's both of our fault. It's the non-white male and the non-white female's fault for not producing justice. That's a united, independent effort. So it's both of our fault. Ain't no sense of sitting around waiting for white people to do it. They ain't going to do it unless you force them. And there's nothing that we are doing currently that's forcing them to do that, to produce justice. And there's no sense sitting around thinking about, well, I'm forcing them doing this, and then this person is forcing them doing that. No, there's no time to sit around and think about that. You get the job done, then you can sit around and talk about it. And once the system of racism, white supremacy is replaced with a system of justice, once that happens, everybody's going to claim that they did it. So it really ain't going to make sense to sit around and talk about it then. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Miss Williams?
Excellent point, Mr. Williams. But I wanted to chime in on the part about the non-white females wanting to take on the beauty standard of the racist woman. I'm a part of my background is in cosmetology, barbering as well, right? So I've seen that so many times that women will come in and non-white females will come in and they got a picture, and the picture is a racist woman. And I want my hair to look like that. But your hair is coiled. But because they brought us so many beauty products, Madam C.J. Walker and various people, to straighten the coiled hair, and because the non-white female was constantly being bombarded, I'm one, about her looks and what her hair should look like, that we just took on that as our standard of beauty because we had to have straightened hair, not thinking the damage is doing to our actual scalp, right? I remember seeing in a video where there was a police officer, and evidently there had been murder, homicide, or whatever, that someone was killed, but they did an autopsy, and this was a non-white female, but they did an autopsy, and the officer asked, well, why is her scalp looking different from the other scalps, right? And the person doing the autopsy said, because of chemicals. And he actually showed how the chemicals were damaging the non-white female scalp. And yet the racist woman can use products, but it wasn't doing the same to hers, right? So our standard of beauty was forced upon us to look like racist women. And a lot of our jobs, because I remember in workplaces, you had to have a certain look to even go on the interview, because if you came in looking with curled hair, whatever, it was not acceptable. So they pushed those standards on our women, on our non-white females, and then it produced more for the non-white males to admire, because they wanted us to look like the racist woman. Now, a lot of them don't want to admit it, but it's true. And even today, that's still going on. People, racist women are having all types of surgery. There was a time they would always say, "Is my butt too big?" And they wouldn't dare want a big butt. But then they realized, oh, big butts are in. Non-white males were talking about they like big butts. So all of a sudden they want big butts. So they're doing surgeries and whatever. But the saddest thing about even that, the non-white female jumped on that bandwagon. It was enough she jumped on the bandwagon with her hair. Then she jumped on the bandwagon with all these cosmetic surgeries. Got to have big butt, got to have big tits, got to have whatever, but it's always trying to improve herself when there was nothing wrong with her. There was nothing wrong with her, but it was a mindset that were given forced upon us to make us think we were inadequate as females. Now, for me, I remember being a cosmetologist, I never wore my hair natural. I mean, back in the early years where the Afro was in, yeah, I did then. But when the different hair straighteners came in and all that, I started doing all that. But after seeing that autopsy video about what happens with those chemicals, it let me know then that it was time for me to let this stuff alone. So what I do now, I even teach non-white females to stay away from the chemicals, the hair color, the any of those chemicals. I mean, I already know those chemicals even in shampoo and conditioners, but whenever it gets to where they're harmful products that can actually cause damage, and we're finding out now that a lot of these products are the reason why a lot of non-white females have fibroid tumors, have cancer, have various things because of the overuse of these products because we did not know. So I'm to the point now that I like being me. I don't have to have my hair to look like a racist woman. I can have my hair the way I want it, and it's more healthier for it. And then the hair grows longer simply because you're not doing as much manipulation to it through the chemical process. So I just want to say that even though the non-white female fell for that in many ways, we have to always, I don't want to blame the non-white male, but I just want to say for the record, he was partly responsible too, because he wanted his woman, his female to look a certain way. And I'm not saying all, because we got a lot of non-white males who have finally realized, I want my woman natural. That's all to it. I don't need all the extras, but a lot of non-white males, they're still in that mindset of having women who are artificial. And it does not make any sense, because when you stop and think about anything that's artificial, sooner or later it's going to deteriorate. So that means more surgery on top of surgery. How long can you continue to do surgery till you realize you have nothing to do surgery on? It reminds us of Michael Jackson when he kept trying to fix his nose. He kept trying to fix it till it could be fixed no more, and it was just damaged. So we just have to think about. It reminds me of the statement that says, "Learning not to lie to yourself." You know what I'm saying? Can you accept who you are without all that? And can the person who you choose to make, can they accept you who you are without all that? If not, you're looking at the wrong person, because you shouldn't have to be artificial to be with anyone. And if you having to be artificial, most likely you're going to get an artificial man. I'm mute.
Excellent. Excellently well said, Ms. Williams. Mr. Carter?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I hope I'm not moving too far ahead of anyone. But I really like these points, especially the first two where it says remarks, special to non-white males. I guess I'll just read the first one. The other one is a little long, but if a chosen female, mate or companion suddenly and without warning or without apparent reason rejects you as a partner in intimate affection and or in sexual intercourse, do not, because of her rejection, vent rage at her, seek to torment her, and or in any manner seek to do mental or physical harm to her. Keep your distance from her, and if you have, and for any reason you are ever in her presence, be courteous and constructive in all your speech and action, regardless of any disdainful thoughts that you may have about her. And I'm sure many of us went through something like that at one time point. I know I have for sure. And I just like this point of, it really helps you focus on uh, the correct way of thinking and looking at this whole, our interactions and these things that we have with each other. I just found it really constructive. Yeah, that's it.
Agree, Mr. Carter. This goes back to the the interactions between non-white females and non-white males, where we get upset with each other and then we just terrorize them. Slash their tires, put nails in their tires, or throw hot grease on them. I remember I was in an arrangement with non-white female classified as so-called Indian, and whenever we got into fights or conflicts, I would, and not just with her, I would just attempt to ignore the female. That was my go-to. Just subconsciously practicing no contact, no conflict piece of the code. But there was a time where the aforementioned non-white female I had an arrangement with in the past, where she was just literally terrorizing me, and I didn't even know it. She has figured out a way to get into my my Instagram, and whenever I would get new followers who were females, she would block them, and I didn't know she was doing this for probably months, because that's how stupid and confused I was made by the system of white supremacy. And then she started calling me when I wanted to end the arrangement. She would call me a street rat. I'm laughing now because it was funny then and it's funny now, even though it shouldn't be. But I am insane. So, but she would call me a street rat, and then she would say, "I hope you get AIDS." I was like, what is happening? But that is just how these arrangements could just turn from tacky to absolutely terroristic. And yes, although this remarks is to special remarks is to non-white males, most certainly applies to non-white females, because I've seen non-white males terrorized by females, especially from the concentration camp known as South Central, where I am from. Yeah, females and males both are capable of being totally terroristic towards each other. I really like this. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Kwaku.
I was just gonna read one of these as well. I really liked the 6th point, which says, make a maximum effort to speak and act effectively to stop the harm that is being done to non-white females. Speak and act to put a stop to fighting them, taunting them, name-calling them, being discourteous to them, belittling them, raping them, killing them, or helping to deprive them of that which they should have, and forcing them to do more with less. And I thought that this one was a really good one, because like I've been mentioning this whole time as we talk about this area, because I feel like it's so very relevant, is with this whole trend of just blaming Black women. And I feel that there is never enough constructive information being shared or constructive solutions being shared, rather just finger pointing and all these things that he listed, taunting them, belittling them, being discourteous towards them. Like when you get on a platform or a video, whatever you want to call it, and you're just for lack of a better word, just talking, crap about Black women, what do you expect other people to do towards Black women, especially when you as a Black male or a non-white male get on and start talking about the non-white female in that like that? What do you expect other people to do? We all know that the white supremacist is laughing at us when we're attacking one another like that. But you kind of just open the door for people to come in and just start expressing their negative opinions about them, and really just start piling it on top of the non-white female. So I thought that was very good. And that's just always something that I've been seeing, and it's something that's always really bothered me. I think it's one thing to kind of bring it to bring the attention to it, the awareness to it. But if you're making it so much as that it's just pointing the finger, this is all the non-white female's fault, the non-white female needs to do better, blah blah, but not taking the time to analyze what you can do as a person, like maybe as a non-white male, like maybe start asking more questions so you don't end up disappointed, stuff like that. So I think I really enjoyed that point you made.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Craig. It was a perfect segue into what I was going to share from the code. I'm reminded. Well, I should say first that Area 3 Entertainment has allowed such a vicious attack on non-white females. This whole bitches and hoes mentality started a very long time ago, and it has only just gotten so much worse. I'm on the song by Dr. Dre, literally titled, and keep in mind Dr. Dre has a white wife, I believe. So greater captured, heavily brain trashed, heavily confused. But the lyrics state bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. So this is the kind of this is how we've been trained to see non-white females as hoes and tricks, which is why it's so freaking easy for the entire planet to trash and mistreat non-white females, especially Black females, because the things we perpetuate, the things that we have been trained to perpetuate, is just ammunition for the mistreatment. So if other non-white, non-Blacks see us disrespecting, see us mistreating non-white females, then it should be expected that they will follow suit. One of my first days moving to this new area I live in, I saw an Asian person mistreating a Black female at a beauty supply, and she seemed so used to the mistreatment that she didn't even it didn't really faze her too much. She still bought stuff from the Asian guy. She still supported his business and went about her victimized way. So really, really tragic what's happening. And I bring up this song by Dr. Dre because the code introduces a new idea of the whore / prostitute, something that non-white Black people get paid millions to call Black females, non-white females. So on 323, whore, prostitute. During the existence of racism and white supremacy, do not say that any person is a whore unless you and that person agree that both of you are whores. Explanation: during the existence of white supremacy and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, all of the non-white people in the known universe function as direct or indirect whores for the white supremacists, racist men and racist women collectively. This whore service is rendered in every area of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war / counter-war. When talking about non-white people serving as whores and or prostitutes, always blame racist man and racist woman. Explanation. The system of white supremacy is specifically designed to force non-white people to function as whores and prostitutes. Therefore, the only way to prevent non-white people from functioning as whores, prostitutes, sex slaves, pimps, etc., is to replace the system of white supremacy racism with the system of justice and balance between people in all areas of activity. Question: what is the best and correct thing to say when someone says that some, most, or many non-white females are whores? Answer: say the system of white supremacy is designed to force Say the system of white supremacy is designed to force and or entice all non-white people to serve as whores in all areas of activity. I much prefer the term victim, but the word whore definitely makes sense. We are at white people's racist man and racist woman's will. They have total dominating control over where we live, how much money we can make, and if they choose to, I'm sure they have ways to pretty much force us to do anything. So I understand this part of the code. I understand where Lee Fuller is going with this. I do think this is a great counter to Area 3, non-white people being trained to think of non-white females as hoes and bitches and all that terrible nonsense. So if people here, if you ever get a chance to talk to a rapper or someone who supports that kind of noise that is often called music, this could be an interesting thing to share with them if possible. Is there anyone who have notes to share, comments?
Yeah. For the what's this last one? For the last point where it says, do however speak with the truth about the direct and devastating effect against non-white people that such sexual intercourse and or sexual play has when it takes place during the existence of racism. So I know Neely Fuller gives his analogy about the the slave ship and the prison, and white people having sex with non-white people is equivalent to pedophilia and child abuse. So one thing I've always kind of struggled to convince other non-white people. For some reason, that one is just too. It just goes over their heads. I guess they can't. They're still confused about their position. When you guys have any other kind of way of getting that across to non-white people, especially non-white males, that by engaging in sexual activity, sexual intercourse, or sexual play with white people, the devastating effects it has during the existence of racism.
Well, I just hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I simply say that I don't engage in sexual intercourse with white people. I don't have sex with white people, white females. And sometimes the language I use is a little harsher than that, depending on the situation. And when they ask me why, because I've been asked why on numerous occasions, I say because I'm a victim of racism. Immediately, the white people understand that. Non-white people, they don't know what I'm talking about. The white people understand the logic. So it's like being a victim of pedophilia and you're hanging around adults. Now, what child is a victim of pedophilia and hanging around adults? So they'll want the adults as far away from them as possible because they don't know which one is a pedophile, And so I use that analogy usually to get the point across. A lot of Black people understand that analogy because, unfortunately, under the system of racism and white supremacy, a lot of Black people are victims of pedophilia. So that analogy usually strikes home with Black people. So children shouldn't be, if they're victims of pedophilia, they shouldn't be hanging out with adults and, doing things with adults. Nothing of a sexual matter. Nothing. Because, chances are that adult is a pedophile. And if they're not, the child may not ever know it. So it's that kind of an arrangement under the system of racism, white supremacy between white people and non-white people. The white people are the adults. They're in the powerful position. So it's never going to be love. I mean, Black people will say that they're in love with a white person. White people say that they're in love with a Black person. They ain't talking about the same thing. Because of the power dynamic between the two. So I avoid a conversation with Black people about their specific victimization circumstances. I just use that analogy to help them understand the logic of why it's necessary for me to avoid that kind of contact with white people. Does that help?
Tremendously. I think that definitely puts it into much more understandable, better perspective of how to get that across to non-white people who for some reason cannot stop engaging in sexual activity with white people. So thank you for that.
And the next piece of the code I'm going to read touches on why that is such a why that's such an issue. We have to remember we have been trained to subconsciously or consciously to worship white people. Many Black people get on their knees every morning and pray to a white Jesus. And in the brain computer, I can't imagine how much damage that does to the brain computer, but I suspect that is why a lot of non-white people have such a huge attraction to white people. And I also suspect that is why some Black males possibly become so-called homosexual, because they have been getting on their knees and loving and praying to and relying on the white male figure. I may be totally incorrect about that, but I am retarded, but that is something that crossed my mind. So on page 323, we get up the code mentions love and how love and justice are the same thing. And if love and justice are the same thing, and we live in a system of injustice, that would indicate that love does not exist. So the code states, love, as long as racism and white supremacy is the dominant motivating force in the affairs of the people of the known universe, do not expect to know or understand what love is. Do not expect the word love to have a functional meaning. Do not expect to experience true love. Avoid using the word love to describe any feeling or conditions now in existence. Explanation: the word love has been used incorrectly to describe too many different conditions in too many different ways. Love is speech and or action that produces a result. That result is justice. Love and justice are one and the same, but asking for love can be confusing. Instead, ask for justice. Racist white supremacists do not permit true expressions of love What they do permit and what they do promote is an arrangement between the people of the known universe that appears to be love. Racist men and racist women, white supremacists collectively, are opposed to the establishment of love. They promote the uses of smiles, hugs, handshakes, kisses, sexual intercourse, songs, burial ceremonies, etc., as being acceptable substitutes for love. White supremacists, I'm just gonna skip the 325. White supremacist racists, however, regard true love as something that non-white people should only have for white people. White supremacists require that non-white people not to love each other, but only tolerate each other, and then only as is necessary to collectively render service to the system of white supremacy racism. So that may be another reason why non-white people can not stop having sex with white people, because we have been conditioned to love white people, to see them as our true love. You know, we spend our entire lives watching white women in the television screens, in the movie screens, and that does something to the black brain computer. I'm reminded of victim of racism, Dr. Q, and his story of how he was in love with I forget the actress name, but he told his mom that he wanted to be with her, or that he liked her, and that's just like an indication of like the messages, the signals we get from the world that produce in us the want to be with a white person, and want to have sex with a white person. You know, I don't think that I personally have had any extra attractions to white women. I just didn't have any problem with engaging in sexual intercourse with them, because I didn't know that there was a war being waged against me at that point in time. So luckily I didn't grow up hating non-white females and thinking that they were unattractive. But that is not the same for a large majority of non-white people, non-white males. And non-white males and females have addiction to wanting to be with white people, being willing to be sexually sewered, be degraded by white people in the bedroom. Just look no further than Twitter. Look no further than Twitter to see the white worship is just so pitiful and disgusting on that app. But you should use that as proof of the system of white supremacy and how it destroys the non-white mind, and should be the only reason we want to produce justice. You know, we should be able to look at that reality and say, okay, we should actually produce justice, because this is sickening. But it is what it is, to say the least. Any more comments, questions, or can we get to closing comments?
I think we could get it in the closing comments.
Anyone like to start?
Sure. So Area 8, sex. This has been, I can see why this is one of the more denser chapters. Definitely a lot of clarity has been provided in the area of sex. And I definitely understand what Newly4 means by when he says that sex is one of the greatest motivating forces in the universe, because a lot of issues can arise from sex, and maybe even a lot of problems can be solved through sex. Who knows? But that's it for my closing comment. Look forward to the discussion next week.
Mr. Jola, would you like to share?
My closing comments. I noticed it was a lot of overlap. The scenes, like he said, it's a lot of the same things over and over, which repetitive is always good in my view. I think this is a really good chapter. It's a really important chapter, I believe, because that, sex being the second influence, if not the number one influence over race or racism. And it's just a lot of constructive information. I mean, certain things in here is kind of difficult for me to probably practice in certain aspects, but for the overall, I find for the most part, I see the main thing, the main goal is to minimize conflict between non-white males and females. So that's one of the most part of it, or the most part that I find the most constructive, and I appreciate his work on that. That's all.
My closing comments is this section was very constructive on how you will want to try to produce justice in the sex area and to form a better situation with non-white females and males that were not our biggest issues until we solve the underlying issue, which is the system and where we live in. But other than that, it's just an eye opener on how you should go about any kind of situation with a person that you will want in your future eventually.
For mine, thank you everyone who's shared so far. The relationships between non-white people, meaning non-white males and non-white females, is something that I like to describe as atrocious, because it is not as it should be, nor will it ever be until we have a system of justice. And if non-white people truly want to be constructive together, truly want to be have peace with one another, then it's best that we all get serious about producing justice. And we can do that by understanding racism and white supremacy, what it is and how it works, and changing our thought, speech, and action to give as little power and cooperation to the system as possible. And that's it for me.
For my closing comments, for the pages we covered, I do agree with that one closing comment with stuff being reiterated in the pages we covered. The stuff about, for specifically non-white males, was reiterated at least 3 different times in the area that we covered. And then compared to the 1984 edition, I know there was like a couple of pages I had read from that version, and he had reiterated stuff for non-white females. So that's all I have for my closing comments.
I'd like to thank everyone for a constructive conversation.
Ms. Williams, would you like to share a? Oh, there you go. There you go.
My closing is that I'm really enjoying this chapter on sex, because it's really helping non-white people to get a straight head on what's really important as we fight this battle of war to replace racism, white supremacy with justice. And since we know this is one of the most effective areas of sex, is that we must get a thorough understanding of it to know how to effectively choose the mates that we're going to be with, so then they can be a plus for us versus a minus. The way the system was set up before, it left non-white people and their relationships being in a minus, while the racist people and their relationship were blooming. So we have to grasp this in a way that is going to best serve us, because we are at war, and at war, we have to use all the effective measures possible to get the best results. I've enjoyed it, very constructive. I mean,
Thank you, everyone. There was a question that was asked in the chat, and I believe that that viewer is still with us. So I'm gonna pose the question to everyone, and if those who would like to answer, feel free. So the question is from Landwood Payne. How can we get into a position to produce justice when most Black people within the non-white category are not interested in fighting racism and white supremacy? My approach to this question is attempt to find the non-white people who are interested in understanding what's happening on the planet and wanting to make the planet better. Also could be constructive to change the topic from fighting racism to producing justice, or allow that non-white person to discuss their problems, and it will lead to racism and white supremacy, and that may be your opening to attempt to get them to become serious about countering racism. Would anyone else like to answer the question?
If you know someone that is not serious of the problem, and you're friends with them, then kind of just cut them off from the situation, because it's no point of that relationship will become very unconstructive.
I would say in regards to that question, network with other victims that are at least attempting to produce justice, or at least willing to talk about this subject, because there ain't gonna be many people you might come across. Because I mean, it's just, you know, us participating here, so we're doing more than spectating. So network with other victims that are willing to talk, because spectating is part of the reason this problem has gone on as long as it has, because we don't pass on constructive information to one another.
Great answer, Dan. All right.
My response is you don't need all non-white people. You only need a substantial number of non-white people to produce justice. So if you're waiting on other non-white people to do it, that's a very difficult approach to take. You do it. And other non-white people who are interested will also do it. That's the essence of United Independence.
Thank you, everyone. Really, really well said, Mr. Williams. I appreciate that answer. All righty. Thanks for participating in the discussion. And thanks for the audience over on the YouTube.